Hi everyone, my name is Jason Attard, and I welcome you to the webinar which I will be moderating today, titled Corona decrowns the King, Going Contactless, which is part of the Shaping Malta's Future, the New Norm webinar series that is organized by Thornton, Malta. The series are based on three pillars: economy, society, and environment. And the webinar today is part of the economic pillar. You can find more information about the series and how you can attend, and also the survey we did on the topic on our website, which is grandthornton.com.mt. So I will be discussing this topic today with four panelists. We have David Ecott, who currently heads the banking supervision at the Malta Financial Services Authority. David has vast experience with financial regulators, so he previously worked for the Bank of England for 22 years. We have Christian Farrugia, who's a director at 24/7 Pay. Christian is currently a board member of the Institute of Financial Services Malta, and also a member of the investment committee of the Institute of Financial Services Practitioners. We have Kenneth Farrugia, who's Chief Business Development Officer at Bank of Valletta. He currently sits on the board of directors of BOP Asset Management and is also director on the board of Villena Funds SICAV PLC. And we also have Godwin Scambry, who's the co-founder and CTO of Nominal. And in recent years, Godwin shared his expertise as an independent consultant and co-founded Nominal, which is a reusable KYC identity solution that is developed on blockchain. So statistics published on EU payment habits shows that the use of cash is highest in Malta amongst all EU countries. Responses from the survey that we conducted specifically for the series shows that the Maltese population is basically ready for a change. So here we see the survey results, and 76% of Maltese people said that they would avoid using cash after the pandemic, mainly due to the health concerns. So bearing in mind that the survey responses were well distributed between the age groups, so we're not looking at just the youth population here. Do you think that business is ready to make the change to contactless? Godwin, maybe we can start with you.
Well, I've seen a lot of activity and a lot of changes. I mean, as we spoke, we've seen that merchants have had to take drastic measures in order to continue to operate. There have been a number of situations where a number of businesses who did not have yet an online presence, and they were scrambling to set up online shop. I have seen and worked with a few that actually during these 3-4 months have set up shop, and therefore definitely the coronavirus has pushed them to start looking at different channels. But you know, I also am afraid that old habits die hard. So when it comes to actual people, you know, moving from cash to non-cash effectively, we quickly are, as we're quickly seeing people moving back to old habits once the scare sort of, at least in our eyes, is moving away. But businesses have certainly taken the plunge and looking at alternatives to going contactless.
Chris from 24/7 Pay, you can have you?
Yes, I agree definitely with Godwin. I mean, the COVID situation had increased the pace for merchants to adapt to a cashless society. However, I would say also from experience that this phenomenon was on the increase before the COVID situation, because quite a good number of clients, although still on the low side when compared to European countries, are using their cards, their mobiles to make simple transaction. Unfortunately, especially the small shops, the grocer, the hawkers, etc., were quite reluctant to use such systems because they say that there are charges. I mean, their margins will be lower. But given the awareness that has brought out that cash can be also a problem with regards to, I mean, the COVID situation, and then people started, especially merchants, started to think differently. And I'm seeing a huge increase in demand for this type of solutions.
Good to know. Kenneth, can you maybe share your view from your side in terms of from POV?
Yes, undoubtedly, the onset of this pandemic has brought about a marked increase in the demand for alternative means of conducting business. Clearly, this pandemic had a business and operational impact on predominantly most retail outlets. And whilst in the past we've seen that e-commerce predominantly generated single-digit returns for banks in Malta because e-commerce platforms are not present in most of the businesses in Malta, we've seen a surge in this respect. I think it's not just the businesses that need to be equipped to handle, non-cash, or we must add as well non-check payments. And the reason I say that is that we need to change the culture of the Maltese as well to adapt themselves to the reality and the efficiency with which they can conduct payments, both through digital channels, when we're talking about internet banking or mobile banking, or through wearables as well. But also, when they go to merchants, the use of the credit cards or debit cards, in lieu of cash. Maybe the irony within this context is that whilst checks and cash are free of charge or were free of charge because there is a charge being introduced on check payments now, digital payments attract a small charge. But I think when one considers, the human resource effort that goes into managing cash deposits or check-based deposits and the reconciliations for that, definitely there's no alternative but to use digital payments. And I must say that as a banking group, we took a lead in this, in really pushing the use of batch payments with corporates, and we've seen a significant surge in these last couple of months. With literally double the amount of clients that are shifting, check payments predominantly into batch payments. I think they are realizing that, all told, when you look at the cost of servicing check payments, and the cost as well, for the industry in servicing, check encashment, with all those tellers that are simply there just to encash checks, which leaves no real commercial value for the banks. And the banks in turn, and we took the lead as well in this, that we've markedly reduced our, charging structures for digital payments, and we're seeing the benefit of that. Hopefully, we continue to see traction in the space. I must add in conclusion that, one expects as well that from a government perspective, we do away with the habit of sending, check and payments to clients. And this is what we've seen in the past with tax refunds, which involve the issuance of, thousands of checks. Because I think it's a collective effort of all stakeholders to ensure that we move into a digital environment and allow customers to transact digitally.
Thanks, Kenneth. So it's when you mentioned their culture and the way that we are perceived, even from an external perspective. So David, I introduced him before. He's working for the local financial regulator, but obviously David is you're also a consumer. How do you compare the business readiness for contactless payments of Malta to that, for example, of UK?
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I agree with a lot of the points that have been made by my fellow panelists, actually. I mean, in the UK, we've got to a position already where 2/3 of adults are using contactless forms of payment, and well over 20% of payments volumes are contactless. And indeed, I mean, you can see that on the ground, because it's very unusual to go for a night out now in the UK and actually take cash with you. You pay by contactless card for pretty much everywhere you go. I mean, I do see some elements of that being introduced here in Malta, and I'm glad to hear that the trend in that direction started before COVID, and it's obviously refreshing to hear that in one of the sort of beneficial things that might come from the experience we've had is to move Malta in this direction, because I agree with Kenneth that the cost benefit analysis of using contactless versus cash or checks isn't as easy for businesses to do. The data isn't there, but one isn't free and one costs. I mean, there is a cost to using cash. But when I arrived in February, I attended a conference and the central bank was presenting, and there they were talking a little bit about the Maltese attachment to cash and checks, and indeed 60 to 75% of Maltese people then were indicating that they expected to continue to use cash as a significant form of payment. And then I just sort of reflect on how that fits with Malta's sort of reputation, the one that it's trying to build as a sort of fintech and sophisticated economy, and the two things juxtapose a little bit for me. So I think there's definitely some work to do. I mean, I would just say that when I arrived as well, I opened up a bank account, and my bank sent me a card after a few weeks. They did their checks properly on me, so that's good. But the card is not contactless. And it's a bit strange to, I'm more or less apologizing when I go into shops now who actually do say, oh, just tap it here, and I have to say, oh no, I'm going to have to get my bank to send me a contactless card, or actually I should probably just upload it onto my iPhone. But nevertheless, I think there are still some changes that we need to make here to drive this forward.
Very good. Yeah, agreed. We definitely need to make some changes, and from the merchant perspective, maybe basically a bit more encouraging the use of cards, even given that obviously there is other work that needs to be done when you are receiving cash payments in terms of accounting and other management, and even security that you wouldn't have to do if cash payment. If card payments would be more prevalent. So one of the factors which maybe annoy me personally as well is going in to buy something, and you have to go beyond a certain limit before you can actually make a payment with card. Is that more of a misconception from businesses that card payments are below a certain limit are not allowed? Chris, Kenneth, maybe you can give us your view on this.
I've come across a few complaints, but I would not say that this is the norm. I think today we've seen that predominantly, I mean, as a banking group, we have around 8,000 EPOS machines spread across, the commercial sector in Malta, predominantly the retail sector. Possibly, maybe it is limited, albeit I've seen this as well in some hawkers that do not have EPOS arrangements or mobile EPOS arrangements, albeit some are recognizing the importance of being equipped to service that, because clearly consumer habits will have an impact on the commercial outlets. So, if consumers wish to pay by card or wish to pay by, using their phone, and then clearly if you're not equipped to handle that, then you lose the business, right? And I think this is the message that you need to have all the channels available and open to consumers, to be able to service their needs. Yes, I did come across instances where we had merchants saying that, say, below 10 euros or 15 euros, they would not service the transaction. I find it somewhat ludicrous to a degree, because intrinsically commercial charging structures are in percentage terms, so it doesn't make a difference if you're spending 10 euros or 50 euros, right? I mean, I think it's just the push of that particular merchant that it would not want to process the transaction, which does not have any logic and sense for me. But there again, I don't think that will have full 100% adoption. But the push is to get the majority of merchants and the majority of clients adopting to digital means of payment.
Well, in fact, I think it's lack of education In fact, last week I've experienced this with two different shops, small shops, mainly in the small grocer and then in the market, where basically they had a note advising clients that card payments are accepted above 10 euros. And I asked the owner or the person in charge, and basically their feedback was charges. However, again, this is where education comes in, because as Kenneth pointed out, charges are paid based on percentage. So if you pay €3, the charge is a few cents. And again, maybe by time they have to change their mentality, because they will find that clients, a good majority of clients, want to pay by card. So basically, I'd rather accept even lower amounts than losing a client. I mean, I would say that by time, hopefully, this will change as well.
I'm sure other people can even relate to this. So my personal experience, if I'm giving fuel to my car, I would go to someone that I know who has an EPOS machine that I can pay for without going out of my car. So I think merchants will start to realize that actually they will need to accept those payments to be competitive within the market. So this increase of cashless payments would automatically mean an increased transaction volume to financial institutions, which they will have to monitor for fraud and financial crime, which may mean more requests for information from the customers. Does this have to be an increased burden to the customer? Gordon, maybe you can give your view on that.
Well, the acceptance of cards in Malta, I don't think is risky, because when it comes to card payments, the fraud happens at merchants that would usually be remote, the local merchants would be defrauded with foreign issued cards. Of course, locally, on the other hand, I think the risk is with regards to card holders having their card numbers, card details stolen and reused, and then in most cases outside our merchant portfolio. And therefore, it's important for the merchants who are listening not to be afraid for this, but of course to be wary that on the other side they could have cards that have been stolen. That's exactly what I set up NomiNow for. NomiNow is an identification solution that you get verified ones, and very easily you can share the information even during and when making payment. As we know, the merchants, on the other hand, could be hit hard if they are frauded, if they do not take the necessary measures in order to stop certain transactions, especially if certain obvious aspects of a transaction were not looked into. And one of the things that they could do is that of taking care of the information also when somebody is making a payment. However, merchants are very wary of the friction during the checkout process, which would mean people have to give information about themselves while they're checking out. And we designed our solution exactly for that. Well, while you're making a payment, you are also sending, without doing anything else, verified data that will minimize very much the risk. We've done this one-time verification, and yes, we use blockchain because we believe that privacy is very important nowadays, and we designed a solution which does not breach on people's privacy.
Very good. I think blockchain is definitely the way to go. Hopefully we can get that more prevalent within the payment system as well. We can also go beyond the crypto assets that we're seeing today and their volatility.
Jason, I would just add as well. I mean, we're well over a decade into the EU's approach to legislating in the sort of payment space, and it has gradually improved and clarified the standards around electronic payments and the roles and responsibilities of the different actors in this space, including the banks. So if you are a consumer out there and you've got your card, I mean, it's quite clear how fraud issues are covered, and the framework has sort of improved sort of over that sort of decade that we've been with that legislative framework. So, and this has been sort of used as the backdrop for other countries to make much sort of clearer, demonstrable efforts and progress in this space. And as a result, their economies are actually, more efficient because they are reducing their reliance on some of the more sort of cumbersome payments infrastructures and doing a lot more business online. That's a lot more, generally speaking, transparent. And the banks and other actors are investing in their systems' resilience to make sure that they are protecting themselves and their customers against fraud or cyber issues. There are risks if you don't move in that direction associated with cash and checks as well that we shouldn't ignore.
Thanks, David. So I'm sure that, also the MFSA is also regulating KYC and regulating all the AML infrastructure around and also fraud infrastructure around banks and financial institutions, and that's maybe something that we can speak about later on in this webinar as well, because that's important that people actually have competence in our financial institutions, and that's why what MFSA is basically for, to protect consumers and the general public, and to make sure that everything is in a level playing field. Right. So also I'd like to talk more about actually the products and what is available to consumers and business. I know that there are some innovations, especially from 24/7 Pay and BOV. Chris, do you want to maybe elaborate a bit more?
Yes. No, basically, one can find a good number of solutions where they can effectively either can pay using their card, or else they can also pay. We call them card not present transactions. For example, a merchant can send a payment link either from the device or also from their program to the client, where a client receives the link, and obviously he can pay the item that he purchased or the service that he purchased by following the instructions that one can find through this link. It's a very fast system, efficient system, and once the client obviously enters the details following the link, actually the merchant will receive the payment after a couple of seconds. There are also the payment buttons that one can also find. For example, if a merchant has a website, you can use these features in his own website, and which facilitates clients to pay for any product or service using the website. So these are all a few examples that one can find in the market, which facilitates card not present transactions, for example.
Yes, I agree with Chris. I think it's all about widening the breadth of functionalities within the different channels, to induce a degree of ease with which customers can affect their transactions. I mean, if you look at what the bank has to offer today with internet banking and mobile banking, and we've recently introduced BOV Pay, we're reaching around 30,000 subscribers now for the service. And I think the ease with which you can go out shopping or to buy goods and services just with your mobile, right? You don't have to worry about remembering to take your card with your cards with you, or your wallet with you, or your money with you, but simply getting used to the ease with which you can use your mobile to pay for goods and services. Apart from the hygiene factor, which has become now very popular given the COVID environment, right? So the ease of literally using contactless or using your mobile device, to pay for goods and services has been well received by consumers. As well, I think there are positive outcomes coming from this pandemic. So as a banking group, we introduced a restriction on cash withdrawal, this sub 500 euros from branches, for those that have credit cards or debit cards, and shifting these to ATMs. And we were delighted to see that we saw a number of 60 plus clients literally applying for debit cards. I mean, it exceeded our expectations literally. So I think this excuse that is normally tabled that there are the old people, and there are clearly a number of people that are not able to use credit cards or debit cards, but there are those that just need to be informed, just need to be educated, the degree of ease that they can use cards, and they can use ATMs, to service their requirements. And we're pleased to see that we've seen a shift to this. As I said earlier, we will not get 100% take up, right? But it's all about really shifting gradually. It's a journey. Customer preferences from traditional cash and check-based payments to digital payments.
Very good. So it's good to see that COVID has pushed more towards services that were already existent before COVID and were introduced before COVID, but obviously COVID has helped pushing those services more to consumers, because now they're aware of hygiene, etc. And it's been recommended that we would shift more towards card and other cashless payments. So do you think that this change is here to stay, or do you think we will eventually roll back into cash?
I think it will be semi-permanent, let me use that word, and find a way in between. I think we will have a degree of customers which will be converts, and they will start appreciating the use of cards to pay for goods and services. They will become accustomed to that. They will not be afraid to use cards to pay for goods and services. And I think for the more affluent ones, the use of using your device to pay for goods and services will be the in thing, right? I think today, when you go out and you simply have your mobile and you have your wallet with you on your mobile, it's a great customer experience, and it's a, as I say, frictionless experience. And this is what consumers want. They want the minimal friction possible to conduct the purchase of goods and services. And I think the mobile device gives them that, without the worries of having to think of having sufficient money to cater for anything you want to buy.
I just wanted to say, I think Ken is also highlighting the benefits to consumers of just generally moving towards more sophisticated payments mechanisms. The use and reliance on checks, for example, which is very new to me coming here to Malta, is a bit bizarre, because not only do you have to go and get the check, you've then got to make sure you don't lose the check before you get to the bank to cash it in. And then invariably there's indeed a range of other customers at the bank waiting. So it takes time to actually get the check either cashed or paid into your bank account. And this all adds into a frustration in the customer experience, whereas an online payment would be in your account straight away. And if you are the kind of person who has it linked straight to their iPhone, you don't even need to have your card with you to be able to check that the money's there and start using it. So for customers, there are lots of benefits to actually making this cultural leap. I know the government and others have made some efforts through COVID to try and make it easier for the Maltese to make that shift. But I think it's something that indeed, if we can get some momentum behind, would be very useful to continue.
Well, I think I agree. I mean, it's here to stay, because also there's a level of comfort, both from the client point of view. It's good that now people are realizing that you can order your groceries online, because the merchant now is equipped. He receives your order, and in a couple of, hours, you have the order at your house. You pay online, or they have also a portable device, and there you are. From the merchant, it's also comfort, because there's no need to visit the branch to make cash deposit of your sales at regular intervals. Therefore, there's no need to queue up, which obviously it's a cost, because you're losing time queuing up and wait for your turn. So people are realizing, both merchants and clients, that ultimately cashless society is also there's a degree of comfort.
I think as well, something to point out as well, that will, I think, will increase the sort of the adoption of alternative means of payment, is if in our retail outlets, particularly in supermarkets, where they have significant footfall of thousands of consumers, we have tellerless cash points. Right? Cash points is the wrong word actually to use, because today if you go to a number of supermarkets abroad, you don't have the human resource there, to process the acquisition of goods and services, or the purchase of goods and services, right? So you're there with your mobile device or with your card, you go there, you just scan your goods and services and you're out, right? And it's a fast-track process. You don't have to wait in line behind other consumers, and I think that will increase the ease you can use these tools, if I may use that word, to purchase goods. I think if we really encourage that, within these touch points where we have significant footfall, then it will be easier even for institutions like ourselves and others, to promote the use of cards and the digital means of payments for goods and services.
Yeah, so I myself has been previously in the UK, and online shopping and cashless payments and the online transactions were very much common practice. And when I came to Malta, I found that it was still a bit area. Now it's good to see that people are actually using those, and as hopefully would move to tellerless supermarkets, because then you can go out of the supermarket faster and check out faster. Thanks for your views on that. So now the move towards cashless payments will promote more transparency and help the blockchain/technology island perception that we are trying to promote. What measures or actions by the government do you think are adequate to promote more cashless payments? Godwin, maybe you can start with you.
One thing that comes to mind is that from what I heard is that these vouchers that the government has introduced are paper-based. And so the first thing I would say is, yes, you need to scan, but they have introduced this thing that you have to go to apparently to the branch to pick this up. And so there's queues over there, then you have to go with this paper and somebody must scan it for you. I think coming back to payments and a similar thing, why do we use payments? It's clear that digital payments or cashless forms of payments have many advantages, many things that you cannot do with actual cash. I think there's only one thing you can do with cash, which is basically launder money. That digital money, or especially crypto, you can't do if you're properly verified. On the other hand, you have many things that you can do with digital payments that you cannot do with cash. Things like, of course, buying online and receiving refunds, for things that you want to send back. So these are real benefits. So why do people still tend to use cash? My humble analysis of that is that acceptance and the fact that people still receive cash. I think part of the people still having cash in their hands is receiving them in the first place, either by their employers, or in many instances we have seen the government still paying by check, but we are seeing an effort there. But I think there's a lot more that the government needs to do in this regard, and embrace technology and see what needs to be done, because the technology is available. We are a small island and we really can make tremendous progress in this regard, and especially handle as well the risk of laundering money, which digital money really can manage that on one level. When it comes to acceptance from the small merchants, I think there's a lot of cash being used as was mentioned before by hawkers or small types of merchants. And these probably, it's education. It's the fact that before maybe there was limit to also with technologies. They are out on the road. They are out, without electricity, for argument's sake. But today there's acceptance both on the phone, or there are POSs that can connect without having to have, of course, a power supply and an internet connection that is connected. So the technology is there. There are many things. In my opinion, yes, I think the cash needs the resolution of cash is not handing out cash in the first place. and introducing more measures, and as we introduce more measures, embrace the digital, such as, you know, the idea of vouchers, for example.
Thank you. Kenneth, do you know, share your views on this?
Yes, I think government can play a more accentuated role than it has played so far in really, you know, inducing this paradigm shift, you know, from traditional legacy means of payment to digital payments. You know, I've read about in a particular country that, you know, government has introduced a tax initiative, because sometimes there are tax-driven reasons why, you know, merchants process cash payments, right? I'm not saying this for all the merchants, but there are these realities, right, that we need to talk about. And, you know, governments, knowing about this, you know, introduce a tax regime, a differentiated tax regime for turnover that is channeled through EPOS machines, right? So they have differentiated between check and cash-based payments to payments channeled through EPOS machines. So that's an initiative which is, I think, worth considering. I think it's an excellent idea to stimulate the shift, and I aligned this particularly to the date when government had introduced way back the final withholding tax on income, right? The final withholding tax of 15% on income and capital gains. And we've seen the shift that people that used to hold money, you know, at home, you know, shifted these monies to bank accounts, right? So sometimes it takes a very small initiative, a very small stimuli to change people's habits. And you know, I think apart from these fiscal initiatives, you know, there are education initiatives that I think need to be pushed at national level. I think the banks are doing their part in really pushing the use of alternative means of payment. But I think this needs a real national drive, and, you know, governments need to lead by example, right? I think it's very important. I think what has happened with the vouchers, you raise a valid point, Godwin. One easy thing to be done is to send, you know, the vouchers digitally, yes, by mobile. And I think there's a technology to do that. But I think the drive to ramp this up in a short time frame may have constrained, you know, the number of options. But clearly there would have been other options, digital options to address this. But I think government is an important stakeholder in the process, right? And I think there is an increased role that governments can play, you know, in sort of widening the knowledge and the information and the education and incentives to assist, you know, commercial entities, you know, to attract consumers using the appropriate digital means of payment.
Thank you. I would like to move on to my last question, which is mainly addressed to David. So there were a number of you know, schemes that were introduced by the government to basically help out businesses in these times. So one of them was basically to a guarantee scheme for COVID-19. And which may put some pressure on the banks. So obviously the move towards cashless payments needs a bit of trust in financial systems. Financial institutions. Are these institutions still resilient in these times?
Well, we've been working with all of the banks on the range of measures that they themselves and indeed the government has introduced to help support the Maltese economy through a difficult period. So in that sense, you know, the measures that have been put in place are actually to support the economy and mitigate the risks to our banking system that might arise if we or the government here had not taken any action at all. And you see that debate playing out here, but you see it in other countries as well, that the different economic support mechanisms are actually helping ensure that the banking system can continue to service customers appropriately. So I don't think that necessarily is a factor that would be pertinent to this particular debate. The banks have, and you've heard Ken talk about how banks want to try and improve the service that they give to customers, make it easier for them to sort of support use banking services to support their daily lives, and the services that can be provided through contactless are actually one of the ways to support people, and obviously the health issues that we've experienced just show one other benefit that you can derive from it. I mean, it's a difficult period for any government at the moment. I'm sure they're focused on a great many things, and so you know, they have to sort of think about how to take things forward. But some of the benefits as well that we've talked about, if I can sort of reflect on my experience in the UK, some of the benefits we've talked about for businesses also pertain to government. We had a big debate in the UK about trying to get people who didn't have bank accounts to have bank accounts, so we could bring them into the financial system so they weren't financially excluded, that we could reduce fraud in terms of benefit payments and government payments to people, but we could also reduce the transaction costs to government for making those payments and use the taxpayers' money much more efficiently to support people when it does come to difficult times. So I'm sure those lessons apply here in Malta as well, and the government will look at those appropriately. But so I think you know, Malta is in a reasonably positive sort of frame of mind. But as we discussed earlier, you know, there's a history here of use of checks and use of cash, and a cultural issue that we need to keep up the pressure in order to move on in the right direction.
I cannot agree with you more, David. I mean, intrinsically today, you know, and with the onset of quite a number of foreigners that have you know, come to work in Malta, you know, we were seeing quite a number of businesses, you know, paying these employees by check, citing the challenges that, you know, these employees could not open bank accounts. Well, that is not a reality anymore, because intrinsically today the basic payment account is there for everyone to open an account within a few days, literally. And now I can say that we're opening accounts within the day at Bank of Valletta, and clearly, you know, they will be afforded a card with which to conduct their payments. So there's no excuse whatsoever for any employer to be able to use digital channels to pay the salaries of their employees. And I think it's this push and drive, you know, and visibility that we require in the marketplace, you know, to ensure that the adoption to these tools is widened and increased. I think bottom line, when consumers will start experiencing the ease with which they can use their cards or their mobile devices to pay for goods and services, you know, they will not change back. You know, they will not change back. And I've seen this with my own dad. You know, he's turning 79, God bless, and you know, today he pays his electricity bills, you know, to, you know, internet banking, you know, and I know it was a challenge doing that and guiding him on the process. But once you get over that hurdle, you know, there's no turning back. You understand the ease of doing that, you know, via digital channels. It just needs a constant push by both government and the industry and other stakeholders to educate the market.
Yeah, I can't imagine myself queuing up to pay a bill. So glad that. You know, and so same with my parents. I try to teach them to use digital channels as much as possible, because obviously that will facilitate their lives and will give them a lot of time back. So I think we're almost out of time here. So I would like to thank our panelists. It's been a very interesting discussion. So as we saw, the systems are in place for cashless payments. We don't obviously want to get rid of cash totally. We know it's a public good, and it will still definitely be in use. But shifting more towards cashless payments has definitely more advantages to merchants and consumers, and it's obviously easier to use. We also discussed good KYC platforms that we can use to facilitate our lives easier as well, and also some incentives that governments can do, which obviously has worked previously, and maybe this type of incentives can be repeated to promote more cashless payments. So we also saw that obviously banks and financial institutions are still resilient during these COVID times. So thank you everyone for joining the sessions. Thanks for the panelists. I don't think we have any Q&A. And I wish you a pleasant day, and thanks again for joining.